Have you seen the mock turtle yet? Said the queen, walking up to Alice. No, I don't even know what a mock turtle is. It's the thing mock turtle soup is made from. Come with me, and he shall tell you his history. And they set off. As they left, Alice heard the king say to the party generally, You are all pardoned, which pleased Alice, who'd become very upset at the number of executions the queen had ordered. Very soon, they came upon a griffin lying asleep in the sun. Up, lazy thing, said the queen, and take this young lady to see the mock turtle and to hear his history. And she set off. Alice did not quite like the look of the creature, but on the whole felt it safer to stay than to go after the savage queen, and so she waited. After a minute or two, the griffin sat up, rubbed its eyes, and when the queen was out of sight, it chuckled, half to itself and half to Alice. What fun! Well, I'm sorry, said Alice, but what is the fun? Why, cheers, said the griffin. It's all her fancy that. They never execute nobody, you know. Come on. Everyone says come on around here, said Alice. But she followed the griffin. In the story of Alice in Wonderland, you have all kinds of different characters, right? Like you have the Hatter and the March Hare, who are both insane. You've got the White Rabbit that's constantly in fear that it's going to be late for the Duchess in the croquet game. You've got the Queen, who's just angry, like all the time. You've got the King, who's basically a coward. You've got the Duchess, who's haughty and very, very proud. You've got the Cheshire Cat that seems totally disconnected. But my favorite character throughout the entirety of Alice in Wonderland is the Griffin. Because the Griffin seems to be the only one that really knows what's going on. The guy that's got it all figured out. That everybody's playing their roles. Everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. But the Griffin's just kind of like, yeah, it's all really nonsense. From the time you first encounter the Griffin when he's sleeping in the grass while this whole croquet game and all these different things are going on, until the time that he leads Alice to the trial, when they shout out, the trial's beginning, you know, from through that whole scenario, when he's talking to the Mock Turtle. You know, Mock Turtle's talking about, you know, these classes that he took, and the Griffin says, I went to the classical master, though. He taught laughing and grief. And when he goes through all these different things, when he's talking about all this whole scenario, he seems to be the only one that really knows what's going on. And I open the video with that segment, that section of Alice in Wonderland, because I feel like everybody wants to be the Griffin, and some people believe they are. But the reality of the situation is that no one has ever or will ever be the Griffin. Nobody will ever have it all figured out. Over the course of our lives, we're going to have a wide array of different scenarios that we face, a wide array of different situations. And these are going to test us, and they're going to analyze us in a variety of different ways. I always felt that the measure of a man was not by virtue of how he reacts to the highest highs, but how he reacts to the lowest lows. To me, that's the most important thing. With this breakup that I had two options. I had this kind of fork in the road. You know, after throwing my little pity party, you know, I was at this fork in the road. And the question was, which direction do I choose? Do I choose the direction I know I should choose? Or do I choose the direction that my heart says I should choose? You know, the emotional side of me says I should choose. The emotional side says, you know, just keep on keeping on, you'll find love eventually. The rational side of me says, but like, you've got some things you need to deal with though. And so after this, and after talking to my ex, you know, it was kind of like, all right, maybe that is the case. Because being disconnected from her for a number of days, I sat down and kind of had to ask that question. In every scenario where you're emotionally and mentally tested, there will come a point where you will ask yourself, did I bring this on myself? Like, did I do something to make this happen? Is this my fault? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. But I found myself asking that question. And I sat down and looked at this track record that I have. Relationships with friends, you know, former love interests, things like that. And a lot of the former love interests I had, those ended because of the job that I had. I mean, that wasn't really a big blow up or anything like that. It was a result of the job that I worked and the fact that I hardly ever saw them. But you can't really hold a relationship when you're working second and third shift all the time. I mean, it's very, very difficult to do. I mean, if you care about them enough, you can. But the problem was that those folks, those women and I, we didn't really care about each other that much. We got together because, you know, it's Kentucky, and if you're not married by the time you're 26, somehow you're doing it wrong. And so I was like, okay, what's my issues? And so I sat down and I made this list. I wrote this list down. And I said, okay, let's look at the breakup and let's look at how I reacted to it. I reacted emotionally. I reacted by lashing out, by saying things I shouldn't have said. And I said, okay, well, that was certainly a contributing factor. If there was the ability for salvation of this relationship, it went right out the window because of how I reacted. And so then my question was, have I reacted like that before? And I thought back immediately to that big blow up that I had with Comic Story. Not really a blow up, but a fight I had with Comic Story. And I was extremely stressed. I mean, I had just moved here to Colorado. I had just, basically bought a house, relatively, not long before that happened. I was still kind of stressed about the fact of, do I want to live here or do I want to go back to Kentucky? But I just bought a house here, so now I have to stay here. So on some level, I felt trapped. It was a trap of my own making, but I felt trapped nonetheless. And all these things kind of came to bear when he and I were talking about we were going to upload a Batman video. That's what we blew up over. And as soon as I left, I felt terrible. And I had to go back to him and say, look, man, I'm sorry. Like, a man's not a man unless he can admit when he's wrong. And I've got to admit that I'm wrong here. Like, you did nothing wrong. I blew up. I freaked out, and I apologize for that. That's my screw up. There's nothing I can do here but apologize for it. He's like, dude, water under the bridge. So, it was. I had that record. And so I thought, if I have that record, why? And I know that people get emotional, and I know that people have a tendency to kind of freak out. But the more that I looked at these things, the more that I realized that it was a combination of things. It was highly stressful situations, which you wouldn't think would be a problem because I spent 10 years at a super high stress job. I spent 10 years at a job where you would have phones ringing, radios going, and like alarms going off for our various alarm monitoring systems all the time for the whole 8 hours that I would be there, even sometimes 16 or even 24 hours if I'm working a straight, 24-hour shift, which I did multiple times when I was at that job. And looking at that, it was like, okay, so if I have this track record here, that means that if I stay the course and nothing's done, then this is going to repeat itself. It's going to happen again with some other woman that I get attached to somewhere later on down the line. But then there's this other direction where it's like, okay, but what if we work on that? And so what I did is I did a couple things. One, I called up a therapist. I just wanted to kind of have somebody to talk to. And I have no idea if it will benefit me in any form or fashion, but it can't hurt. And so that's the benefit of the thing. Yeah, like I did that, which is kind of strange to say on a YouTube video, but I don't mind saying that because I don't mind revealing things that can improve oneself. The other thing here is I jumped online on Google and Googled a whole bunch of books, or Google searched, different searches, dealing with stress and how to be a better man and different things like that. And I found 6 books that would benefit me. And it's kind of crazy because I ended up having these things, shipped to my house. And it's interesting because, I did this days ago, and it's still something that weighs heavily on my mind. And so I bought these 6 books right here. And over the course of the next week, these will all get read. Preferably 1 book a day. Maybe not, it depends. I personally love reading. One of the challenges that I put on myself every once in a while whenever I go flying, not all the time, but whenever I go to fly, one of the challenges that I'll put on myself is I'll go to a bookstore in an airport and I'll buy a book, when I'm actually at the airport, when I'm leaving. So when I'm flying out of Denver, or when I was in Lexington, when I was flying out of Lexington. And the challenge was I had to buy the book and I had to read the book and come back with the book totally finished before, by the time the trip was done. Now, how big of a book I got was relative to the length of the trip. If it's like a 3-day book, if it's a 3-day trip, then it might be a book like this thin or something like that. If it's like a week-long trip, then it might be a book like that, But the idea was to challenge myself and expand my horizons in terms of reading and so on. I've kind of dropped off on it in recent years, but I bought these because, to me, the idea of self-improvement, of becoming a better person, that's never ending, right? That's why we talked about the Griffin in the beginning, is because everybody wants to reach the point where they feel like they have it all figured out, but nobody ever has it all figured out. That's the nature of the whole thing. It's like from the play As You Like It by William Shakespeare in the 2nd or 3rd or 4th act or something like that, when Jacques gets up there and makes his grandiose speech, and it begins with one of the most famous lines in all of Shakespearean literature. All the world's a stage, and the men and women are merely players. They have their entrances and their exits, and in his lifetime, a man may play many roles. There's a lot of truth to that statement. We play the roles of brothers and brothers and sons. We play the role of friend. We play the role of hunter. We play the role of the guy getting drunk, the guy going to parties. We play the role of a person trying to figure themselves out, dating frantically in our 20s. We play the role of a husband. We play the role of a father, grandfather, great-grandfather. We play the role of a dying man. You know, we play all these different roles over the course of our lives. And because we play these different roles, the journey for self-improvement never ends. It never, ever, ever stops. It's always just a matter of there's something more to be learned here. There's another step to be taken here. And so this is my step. This is, I guess, my step in this next stage of figuring out who I am. I mean, you guys can tell from the bookshelf back there, reading is a very important thing to me. And so I don't know where this will take me. And I don't know if it'll lead anywhere that matters. I don't know if I'll walk away from all this marginally better than who I am right now, or massively better. You know, I have no earthly clue. Between this and talking to a therapist, I don't know. But what I do know is sitting down and thinking about where I was versus where I am now, thinking about the little pity party that I threw, thinking about the past, friendships that I've had and the friendships I still have and the past relationships I had and so on and so forth. There's still some things about myself that need attention, I think is the best way to put it. I don't know about needing to be fixed, because I don't know that they're broken. I don't know that yet. I won't know that until I go through and read books and get a better understanding of myself. But I guess a stronger understanding of who I am. I already have a general idea, but you guys understand what I'm saying. But yeah, so by the way, one of the reasons I adjust my hat is, well, I'm not going to tell you why I adjust my hat. Maybe I'll give you guys a different reason. I'll give you guys a reason in some other video. Maybe I'll make a video on why I always wear hats, because I feel like my hat's part of my brand, and I feel like if I made a video where I wasn't wearing my hat, you guys would freak out, which occasionally I'll do. I think I've done it once before. I just decided to make a video not wearing my hat just to see what you guys said. You guys lost your shit in the comment section. It was hilarious. You guys, where's the hat? Where's the hat? The hat's part of the brand. You have to have the hat. It was pretty funny. People were just caught up on the hat, ignored the entire content of the video, and you guys were just hung up on my hat, on not having a hat. It was actually kind of funny to me. I thought it was pretty entertaining. But anyway, guys, we're gonna go ahead and bring this video to an end. I will catch you all later. Peace.